This month had another appointment with my endocrinologist to kind of discuss how things have been going. And well, it was one of those things where I was hoping for a bit more curves in my transition, and it just always kind of goes back to the line of thinking of, is this it? Can I get anything else out of this? But the problem is, I'm always met with the same old answer of, your mileage may vary. And even more so than that is, if I was to change up my regiment, is the window of opportunity for anything to change closed on me? Unfortunately, there is still very little research on this. After all, if you think about it, how many people have heart disease compared to how many people identify as transgender? You're going to find that pool of people is a lot smaller. And even smaller than that are those willing to participate in any sort of research opportunities. So it's very hard to get clear numbers. But anyways, the main thing that was discussed is it may be possible that perhaps my current method of taking estrogen, which is through pills, is not getting to the bloodstream like it needs to. And so, my endocrinologist recommended needles. And well, this is kind of the problem I have, is whenever I visualize injections, this is what always comes to my mind. I mean, if I could look like Mitsuha, maybe it'd be worth it, but there's just that. I get the idea that when it comes to injections, it's either done through the stomach or on a thigh, so it's not as painful as having to find a vein of some sort. And I guess for the people that are a bit more masochistic, you can take it through muscle. So, like a popular one would be like over the shoulder, for instance. But not only is it going to be a bit more expensive, but it's a lot less convenient. But then again, I would only have to do it once a week or once every other week. If there's any other trans women in the comments, what are your thoughts on injections? Because, I've heard good things, but I just don't do well with needles. And I think the main reason for that has to do with, there was a lot of cartoons I remember growing up where that was like a gag, where somebody was like injected with, like, I don't know, snail plasma, tree sap, or some other thing, and then like the body just warps into this disgusting amalgamation. And well, let's just say the experience of being trans is enough body horror to begin with. Don't want to go for any more of that. So, still up in the air, but let's just say if I knew I was gonna get more of what I'm looking for, I'd be very tempted. Very, very tempted, but just very nervous about it. And when it comes to injections, you also have to really make sure everything is sanitary. I mean, I don't have to worry about getting AIDS from pills. At least I hope not. But then again, I mean, both forms of medication are regulated. These are just my thoughts on the subject. If you have any sort of insight into this, I'd be glad to hear it. And now on to a bit of a first, actually. So, with my Crunchyroll subscription I've got, I realized that there's every iteration of Lupin the Third, which I have done quite a lot of videos on that subject in the past. And I wanted to see about the controversial part 1. And right there in the very first episode, the way Fujiko is dressed has got to be the first time I ever looked at a fictional character and I'm like, you know what? I can pull that off. And, well, that's why I'm dressed like this. And you may notice that I have a red scarf on, just like the way she did in the show. Probably better if I showed I was wearing jeans, but whatever. But either way, it was something that felt very gender affirming. Although obviously I'm not as well endowed as this character, and especially not in the mystery of Mamo. Like, seriously, how on earth does her entire core not like collapse in upon itself? But either way, it was just such a nice thing for me to be able to see a fictional female character and be like, you know what? I can do that. This is a look that I can do. And I gotta say, this shirt is so soft and it's very light. It's something I could probably see just going about wearing outside. However, I'm not really sure how to do the whole scarf thing. I mean, this is just a winter scarf, and, well, it's actually kind of a smoke and mirrors thing, because here's the rest of it. I'm not really sure if this necessarily has a feminine look to it or not. Maybe if it was like a silk scarf, or maybe just a smaller scarf, I think that's what they're going for. But either way, it was just a very nice thing. Well, now I want to get into some more controversial things. So, the first thing that I want to get into is realizing how big the acronym has gotten. And people wonder why they don't take us seriously. How am I supposed to take that seriously? Why don't you just add an N for neurodivergent and N for straight and just include everybody at this point? I feel like those are the only identities that are missing. And I've probably brought this up a few times before, but it's a very similar thing that was happening to the pride flags. I feel like it's inclusion through exclusion. First it was just the rainbow flag, but that wasn't inclusive enough, so they added in a black and brown stripe for people of color. But that wasn't inclusive enough, so they added in the trans colors. But that wasn't inclusive enough either, so they added in intersex. And now they've run out of room, so if you want a two-spirit flag, that's a completely different flag. If you want something to represent drag, that's a different flag as well. It's just like, if you want to be united, why in the world do you keep separating us like this? It should just be one identity. In fact, why don't you just have it simply be Q? Because I was always told growing up that's why it was LGBTQ, with queer being everything else. But then I guess queer wasn't inclusive enough, so they added in a plus sign. Okay, so why not just go back to LGB and then put a plus in there? I think that includes everyone. Well, what do you think about it? And, well, I guess the last thing to bring up as well is there was a bit of controversy over this one character from Jujutsu Kaisen. It's not a show I've seen yet, but I've heard good things. I might have to give it a watch anyways. So there's this character that loves to present feminine. And there was a lot of people that were just like, this character has to be trans, right? And the author himself is like, no, they're just a guy that prefers to look like a girl. And apparently there was quite a firestorm over this, and, well, I'm kind of left wondering, how can I be supportive, so to speak? How to be able to tell the difference between somebody that wants to look feminine and somebody who wants to be feminine. And plus, even that, I'm not really sure if that's a fair distinction, as I'm sure there's a lot of cis women out there that want to be seen as masculine, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of trans women as well. I think the problem is, I, as well as probably a lot of other trans people, are like, I know how difficult it was to be able to start the journey, to be able to find the courage, and so there's often this jumping on the bandwagon. It's just like, oh, you want to start transitioning? Well, you can do this, 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 and this, and then I'll help you find a therapist. You can figure it out. You don't have to wallow in self-pity anymore. You don't have to live on with your suffering existence. And, well, I feel like there's no fear of brainwashing, as, in all honesty, I think if somebody could be that easily convinced that they're trans, then I think there's probably a lot of other issues going on. But regardless, how in the world can you be supportive of femboys and trans women alike? It feels a bit like you can be a little too supportive. I guess maybe it kind of goes to the idea of how separate male and female are. The idea that anything that doesn't fall under the male category immediately goes into what unfortunately a lot of people see as the inferior female category. There's very few things that are in the middle. And I felt like I had a good point there, but that train fell off the rails and now it is burning. I think maybe that's just kind of the thing right there, is because there is such a divide, it's the idea that if a man wants to wear a dress, they have to be trans. But yet, if a girl wants to wear something a bit more masculine, they're a tomboy. So where's this distinction coming from? How in the world can we have it so if a guy wants to look feminine, we could just call him a femboy and then leave it at that? How do you create the distinction between femboy and trans femme? That's the thing I'm still trying to figure out, as well as how I'm supposed to be able to show support for both. Because I don't want to bombard the poor guy with allegations that they're trans femme when they just want to look feminine. And yeah, I guess that's basically about it. Yeah. That's all I can really think of for this month, but if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, feel free to leave a comment down below. And until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.